Classroom of the Elite Year 3 Volume 1 is finally here, and I finally got to finish reading it in its entirety, and it's really crazy to think that we are now in the 3rd year of Classroom of the Elite. It's been a roller coaster when it comes to this series, and while I am happy that we're finally in 3rd year, it's also sad at the same time to realize that this is probably going to be the last year for this series. And while it's still a long way till we reach the conclusion of Classroom of the Elite, it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is the final year, and unless there's plans for future spin-offs for this series or a prequel for this series, we are witnessing the path to the finale for Classroom of the Elite. Another thing that's also worth pointing out is how it took me a while to find a translation, because in recent times it seems that Japan is now cracking down on fan translations when it comes to mangas and light novels, and quite recently we actually had a recent situation happen in which a popular manga site received multiple DMCA takedowns, meaning if you were looking for a certain manga series, whether it was licensed or not, chances are it was taken down from this site. So while this is alarming, I hope in the future I am able to find translations for Classroom of the Elite, especially with the new volumes, because Classroom of the Elite is one of those series that I keep up to date, and I make sure that I'm up to date because it's one of my favorite series of all time. But now that that's out of the way, let's now talk about this recent volume that I finally got to finish reading. And just like always, if you're not up to date with this series or you're still far behind in Classroom of the Elite, then you have been warned, because this is going to contain a lot of spoilers. So with that, let's just begin. If I were to make a big summarization of this volume, it will be this volume showing the huge aftermath of Ayanokoji's actions of leaving Horikita's class to join Sakenagi's class, which is wild because at this point Horikita's class is already in class A, meanwhile Sakenagi's class has gone down to class C. And it's not surprising why this would get a lot of people talking. Why would Ayanokoji go from being part of a top class to now going to the class that's second to last? But I think the biggest reason why this has a lot of people talking is because it's Ayanokoji. At this point in the story, Ayanokoji has kind of built a big reputation when it comes to him, that this is somebody that really hides his true potential, which is really wild to think, because if you look back to year 1 Ayanokoji and year 3 Ayanokoji, they're two completely different persons. For one hand, people did not care about year 1 Ayanokoji, but when it comes to year 3 Ayanokoji, now people are keeping an eye on him. Now people are very cautious around him because they know that he is not somebody that you should fully ignore. So when the news broke out of Ayanokoji transferring from Horikita's class to Sakenagi's class, it becomes a very big story around the school. And I think what I really like about this volume specifically is just seeing the reactions that everybody has when they find out that Ayanokoji is no longer part of Horikita's class, especially Horikita's class as a whole, because they have probably one of the most understandable reactions. They are shocked, they are confused, they feel betrayed. Everyone thought that they were going to be there for each other until the very end. Despite the many sacrifices that they made, despite the many students that are no longer part of their class, now that it seemed that they had a stronger bond, it was possible to reach class A and stay there and graduate from class A. So when Ayanokoji left, it really made people now worry once again if they were really going to make it out of this school. So when you see characters like Matsushita and Sudo really be genuinely shocked, which is something that you don't really see from them a whole lot, and when you see Chawashira go from this calming person who tends to always try to make sure everything's under control to obviously being at a loss for words, it goes to show you just how much of an effect Ayanokoji has had with the class. Because if we're being honest, Ayanokoji was probably one of the most important persons in that class. Without him, the class would have probably crumbled since year 1, and he's the biggest reason as to why the class looks more stronger than ever to the other classes is because of Ayanokoji. But the one person to be hugely impacted because of this sudden change is none other than Horikita. Horikita all throughout the 2nd year really showed that she's become a much more different girl compared to how she acted and behaved in year 1. So the fact that Ayanokoji, somebody that she's been with for basically 2 years now, somebody that she thought she got to know and thought she built some kind of connection and thought that she was finally getting comfortable with him, now no longer being by her side, all she could really feel in these moments is just shock, but also sadness. And even though she tried to come up with many excuses as to why he transferred, maybe he was forced to, or maybe he was threatened to change classrooms, that would be not the case, because when Horikita and Matsushita confront Ayanokoji doesn't really seem to care about what they feel or how they're impacted by this, and in fact just pretty much tells them straight to their faces that he made a decision alone alone to transfer classrooms. And to just show how he cares very little about Horikita's class from now on, when he is being confronted, Hashimoto and and as well as Ichinose are right there witnessing all this. Right in front of them, Ayanokoji tells all of them that they should be wary of Matsushita because just like him, she too has a lot of potential to become a problem in the future, which of course terrifies both Horikita and Matsushita because it's now been made clear that if Ayanokoji wanted to, he has no problems telling the secrets of what made their class successful to his new allies. And speaking of new allies, just because Ayanokoji transferred to Sakenagi's class, it didn't mean that he was given the warm welcome, as unlike people like Hashimoto and who have a good idea as to what Ayanokoji is capable of, a lot of other students don't see it in him. In fact, some are very cold to Ayanokoji and remind him that unless he doesn't produce any results to the class that will benefit them, then they are not going to see him as a leader, something that Ayanokoji predicted was bound to happen. But while Ayanokoji in these moments may not have the support of his class just yet, he does have support from somebody else, and that person being is Ichinose. Before Ayanokoji got confronted by Horikita and Matsushita, he had a conversation with Ichinose where it's made very clear that both Ayanokoji and Ichinose are going to be allies to try to take down Ryuen and Horikita's class, something that of course makes Hashimoto and be very skeptical about this alliance because they don't really fully believe that an alliance is necessary at this point in their school year. It's already the last year, so for them this is their final chance to get to class A. So making alliances at this stage in their school life seems totally unnecessary, and even though Ayanokoji would make them be convinced that this was necessary, since even though he's not part of Horikita's class any longer, and even though Ryuen tends to always make people think that he's not really the brightest person, it doesn't take away from the fact that they still should not be taken lightly because they have a lot of tricks on their sleeves, and not to mention that the people in Ryuen and Horikita's class have become much more stronger than in their previous years. And while I did say that and Hashimoto were convinced by this logic, it's made very obvious that Hashimoto and are going to keep a really close eye in Ichinose, because I wouldn't be surprised that in future volumes we see them both kind of having these countermeasures just in case Ichinose becomes a threat, but we'll just have to wait and see if that even happens at all. And speaking of Ichinose, in this volume it really did fully demonstrate that Ichinose has no problem showing her crazy side. I think there were two specific moments that happened in this volume that really demonstrate that Ichinose really doesn't care about what other people think anymore, because all she's prioritizing now is just her relationship between her and Ayanokoji from now on. Like when Ichika talks to Ichinose when she sees her and teases her relentlessly, only for her to get serious and tell Ichinose that she knows that Ayanokoji has something to do with her sudden change in how she's now behaving, because before Ayanokoji and her, had their moment in that last volume, Ichinose was just depressed. She had no idea what she was going to do. She really did feel like she was put in a corner. But ever since that moment between them, she's now looking forward to what's about to happen next in this last school year, and she now feels like this because she knows full well that as long as Ayanokoji is by her side, that's the only thing she cares about right now. So when Ichika continues to tease her and even flat out admits to Ichinose that she knows that both her and Ayanokoji got intimate with one another, Ichinose doesn't deny it, but she says two words that completely freezes Ichika, and that is none other than the White Room. Upon hearing those words, Ichika's demeanor changes, and when Ichinose tells Ichika that Ayanokoji told her all about the White Room, even though that's not true, Ichika is just left confused and now wonders if Ayanokoji truly did tell Ichinose about the White Room, but also wonders if the existence of the White Room will sooner or later be truly exposed to the outside world. And I wouldn't be surprised that in future volumes, when we do see Ichinose interact with Ichika once again, this time Ichika is much more serious because of Ichika seemingly believing that Ichinose knows more about the White Room. But this wasn't the only moment that showed just how much of an insane person Ichinose has become, because we then get some moments between her and Kei in which obviously Ichinose tries to act all friendly around Kei, even though she fully knows that both Ayanokoji and Kei have broken up, but she still tries to act friendly towards her. But it's the moment where Kei asks Ichinose if she and Ayanokoji are a thing, to which Ichinose denies it, but she just flat out says the state of the relationship is more unique than anybody could ever imagine. Like, in a way, she kind of degrades herself, saying that she doesn't have the right to be next to Ayanokoji, but at the same time, their relationship is just so special to her that she doesn't really expect anything in return from Ayanokoji. It's almost as if she doesn't really mind the treatment that she's getting from Ayanokoji, because she knows full well that Ayanokoji is using her in order to make the next steps to his plans, and that's perfectly fine for her, because as long as she is getting the attention that she wants from him, that's all that really matters. And really, you could tell from the dialogues that Kei just doesn't know how to respond to any of this. But if there's one thing clear to Kei, is the fact that Ichinose's and Ayanokoji's relationship is nothing compared to how hers and Ayanokoji's relationship was. Unlike with Kei and Ayanokoji, in which Kei needed Ayanokoji for a while because she felt safe around him, and he was a reason why she had so much happiness while she was in this school. With Ichinose, on the other hand, her happiness is just simply that Ayanokoji acknowledges her, even if he doesn't really treat her as somebody worth treating special. But in Ichinose's eyes, that's okay. We also get a new character in this volume that is going to be part of Ayanokoji's class, Shiraishi Asuka. There's nothing really too much to say about her because she was just introduced, but it's made very clear that she is going to be heavily involved with Ayanokoji's group. This of course being Ayanokoji, Yamamura, Hashimoto, people like that. So really looking forward to that. She's very kind of a friendly type of character, but she does have a sharp tongue. Like, she will not be afraid of what she has to say. So she's going to be one of those kind of characters, but excited to see where they're going to take this character in this third year. We also got a special exam in this volume, but to be fair, I don't think the special exam was that big of a deal in this volume, because it was more of just simply a way to show that Ayanokoji is going to show his class that he is fit to be a leader and he has every right to be leading the class because of his skills, and he shows it in this exam. As no surprise, Ichinose and Ayanokoji's class are able to beat Horikita's and Ryuin's class. Although I will say that this special exam did once again highlight that Ryuin still has a long way to go before he has his battle with Ayanokoji, because in this exam he tried to, I guess, use it to his advantage, because he knew full well that he was going to lose against Ayanokoji. So he tried to use a special exam to embarrass Ayanokoji, to show his class that he is not fit to be a leader, and to just make him seem like somebody that was not worth being in their class, only for it to backfire, because when he is confronting Ayanokoji in his class after the exam, Ayanokoji reveals to Ryuin that he knew that he was going to do something like that. So instead, he used it to his advantage. No matter what's being thrown at him, he'll make it work. He'll find a way to be the winner at the end of the day, making Ryuin be frustrated, not just because he was just used to be a stepping stone to make Ayanokoji look good, which worked because now the class is in full support of Ayanokoji taking the leadership role, but also because it reminded him of what Sekinagi said to him before she left, that as long as he intends on going solo on his battle with Ayanokoji and can't rely on anybody, then this battle is going to be completely one-sided and it's all going to be his fault, planting the seed that eventually, whether Ryuin likes it or not, he's going to have to make allies with Horikita in order to go on his battle against Ayanokoji and Ichinose. And going back to Horikita, I really do like in these final moments of the volume that we get more spotlight on Horikita trying to once again stand tall and try going forward, but it's proven very difficult when she still is reminded of Ayanokoji's presence. She still can't forget about him, and we get a little tease that it's very obvious that her feelings towards Ayanokoji have grown more stronger, even if she doesn't really understand why or doesn't know what these feelings are. It's made very clear that Ayanokoji is somebody that is always in her head. So to see her just be so defeated, see her like she's about to give up, it doesn't really understand why Ayanokoji did all this. And it's kind of funny really to think about it, because she views this as Ayanokoji realizing that she's not worth staying any longer. Like, all these years he expected her to become much more stronger and much more better as a leader than she used to be, but it seems that he has lost the patience and just decided to leave and go somewhere else. Whereas in Ayanokoji's head, he fully believed that Horikita was ready. She was ready to go solo and that she did not need him any longer. Once again showing the two different mindsets both of these people have and how they're not always correct and they're not always spot on, but seeing Horikita really look so saddened with all this and she's not being her usual self, to the point that there's even a moment in which both Ibuki and Kushida try to wake Horikita up, telling her that she just needs to accept the fact that it's already done and there's nothing they could do about it. Ayanokoji is going to do his own things and she should prioritize doing her own things as well, and trying to make sure the class stays in class A. Although the difference between Kushida and Ibuki's way to trying to get Horikita to go forward is, while Kushida uses her sharp tongue to get through to Horikita, Ibuki just simply kicks Horikita when she least expected it, causing her to fall down and bleed from her hand. But despite all these actions being made, it's still not enough for Horikita to move on, but it will take somebody else to really fully open Horikita's eyes and make her realize that they just have to do what they can to graduate class A without Ayanokoji, and that is none other than Kei. When Kei and Horikita talk, you can tell that they are both being vulnerable with one another, with Horikita expressing to Kei how weak and pathetic she feels now that she has to be going solo on her own as a leader without relying on Ayanokoji from here on out, and Kei being open to Horikita about the relationship that both she and Ayanokoji had and how they both became a thing, by telling Horikita not just about her past and what she had to deal with before getting into this school, but how Ayanokoji saved her during the cruise ship arc and just how much of an important person Ayanokoji became for her in her life. And after this conversation, this will lead to both Horikita and Kei feeling better about the whole situation, and then even joking at one point, saying that if there's one thing that they both have in common is their connection to Ayanokoji. This being the beginning of their friendship, that I doubt this is going to be the last time we see these two interact, and probably in the near future we'll see Kei be part of Horikita's group that she has. This of course being with her, Ibuki, and Kushida, although we don't know if Kushida is going to be there for Horikita, as we do get a moment between her and Ayanokoji when they meet, in which Ayanokoji tells her that if she wants, she could be a spy for him, and from now on tell her everything that Horikita's class is planning on doing and all the tactics they plan on doing in the next future special exams. But Kushida is very conflicted even when Ayanokoji promises her that she will be paid for her work, but even then Kushida doesn't know what to do, as even though she doesn't have the best relationship with Horikita's class right now after her true personality has been exposed, she knows that if she were to do this and people find out about this, all it's going to do is just cause more problems for her. And when Ayanokoji hears all this, all he has to say to her is to really think about it, since she doesn't have to make a decision right now, but to truly think about this proposal that he has given her. And what better way to end the volume with a cliffhanger, as when Hashimoto, Ai, and Shiraishi go to the student council room to check something out, they quickly have to hide when the door suddenly opens, and it's none other than Nanase, who seems to be on a call with somebody. And while at first all three of them did not care what she was talking about in that call, they suddenly do care when they hear that Nanase is in fact having a conversation with none other than Tsukishiro, who, if you don't remember, was the principal that took over Sakunagi's dad just to take down Ayanokoji and bring him back to the White Room under Ayanokoji's dad's orders, only for him to fail. But it seems that despite him not being the position that he was before, it still seems that he has people that are keeping an eye on Ayanokoji, this being Nanase. But it seems that even she has problems, as she states in this conversation that Ishigami and another student that if not taken care of could pose as a serious issue. But just when the twist couldn't get even more insane, we see that when Nanase gets another phone call, she takes out another phone, revealing that Nanase has two phones in her that would surprise Hashimoto, Shiraishi, and Ai. And when they try to make their escape after seeing all this, they don't do a good job, as they make noise, and while they try their best to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, Nanase is already there to confront them, asking what they are doing, only for all three of them to just make the excuse that they were just going to see something in the student council room, and Nanase doesn't question them any further and leaves the area. But even though she's gone, all three of them are just standing there because they came to realize that it's not just the third years that they have to keep an eye on, they now also have to keep an eye on the second years, because in this moment they came to realize that there are some second years that are going to be huge threats in the near future. And I don't really blame them, because before all this happened, we also did get a few interactions between Ayanokoji and Tsubaki, in which Ayanokoji seems to briefly start to remember remember about a girl from the White Room known as Yuki, who was actually somebody that was mentioned numerous times in Classroom of the Elite Volume 0, this being a prequel that heavily focuses on the life that Ayanokoji had in the White Room. And now that he remembers about Yuki, he takes a closer look at Tsubaki and wonders if there's some sort of connection between the two of them. But overall, this was a very solid volume to start year 3, as it's made very clear where the direction of the story is going to go. We're going to see the battles between Horikita and Ryuin against Ayanokoji and Ichinose, going to focus on the conflict that's going on with second year, and obviously the battle between Ayanokoji and his father is still taking place and hasn't been forgotten. And based on the comments that the author made after this volume, it's apparent that he is going to try to make year 3 feels similar to how it was in year 1, because if you compare year 1 and year 2 did have some very great moments, but I feel when it comes to storytelling, year 1 did better. If I'm being honest, when it comes to year 2 of Classroom of the Elite, it did feel a bit disappointing because the first half was great, but it just didn't feel like there was a direction towards the second half of year 2, which was not the case for year 1 because you knew where the story was heading. So I really am glad that it seems that they're going to try to go back to the same writing style as year 1, because that's where I think Classroom of the Elite peaked in storytelling, because every time I read year 1 I was wanting to see more. I wanted to see where this was going to go, where in year 2 it sometimes really felt like a chore reading some of the volumes, because I feel like there were just so many directions the story could have gone, but it never really went there. So you were just left wondering, what was the point of having all of these different directions if there was no concrete plan of where the story was going to go from here on out. But you know, I'm very optimistic when it comes to year 3. It's going to be a new experience once again, and I am really looking forward for the next future volumes. So with that, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.